Ellis spotted the dead trees first. He was 11, and he had his mother's eyes for things that were wrong. A tilt in a fence post, a cloud that didn't move right, a line of pecan trees along a ridge that should have been full with May growth, but stood instead the color of old ash. He pressed his face to the truck window and said, "Dad, those ones look sick." "I know," I said. "That's why we're here." The Harwell County Pecan Cooperative ran 7 orchards across 4 ridge lines in the hill country east of Clanton. 4th-generation, most of them. The Doucette family had trees that went back to 1911. The Pereiras had a grove their great-grandmother planted the year she arrived from the Azores. I had driven past those orchards my whole life, first as a boy in my father's truck, then as a county extension agent in my own, and I had never once seen them look the way they looked that Saturday morning in May. I parked at the cooperative office, which was really just a converted equipment shed with a folding table and a coffee maker that had seen better decades. 3 men were waiting outside. Lou Doucette, who ran the cooperative board, his son-in-law Marcus, and a man I didn't know in press khakis and a Baton Rouge state lanyard who introduced himself as Dr. Philip Tate, senior agronomist with Voss Agri Group. Dr. Tate looked at my county truck and my clipboard at Ellis climbing down from the passenger side with his baseball cap and his spiral notebook. My son liked to sketch whatever he saw in the field. Always had. And Dr. Tate's expression did something I was used to seeing. "It's settled. The extension office sent you," he said. It wasn't a question. "Ray Guidry," I said and put out my hand. "I cover Harwell and 3 neighboring counties." He shook it briefly. "We've had 2 agronomists and a team from the university out here over the past 6 weeks. I don't think a soil survey is going to move us very far at this point." Lou Doucette caught my eye over Dr. Tate's shoulder. Lou had known my father. He gave me a look that said, "I know, and I'm sorry, and please don't leave." "I'd just like to walk the orchards," I said. Dr. Tate was already turning back to his phone. "That's fine. We're recommending full ground fumigation by end of week." The decision's essentially made. I knew what full ground fumigation meant for a pecan operation. It meant sterilized soil. It meant no root recovery for 8 to 12 years. It meant the end of 7 orchards that 4 generations of families had kept alive through drought and flood and depression and war. I didn't say any of that. I just asked Lou if he'd walk with me. Ellis fell on his step on my other side, notebook open, sketching the tree line as we went. I had left the university in 2014, the year after Claire died. We'd moved to Clanton because it was where she'd grown up, where her mother still lived, where Ellis could run in a yard and know his neighbors' names. I'd taken the extension job because it was there and because it kept me outdoors and because Ellis needed a father who came home at the same hour every day and coached Little League in the spring. I didn't talk about the years before. There was no reason to. The county needed someone to look at soil samples and test water tables and drive out to farms when things went wrong. And that was what I did, and it was enough. I hadn't thought about Terrebonne Parish in a long time. The first thing I noticed in Lou Doucette's orchard was the pattern. The blight didn't move the way a root fungus moves, creeping outward from a wet spot, following the water table. It moved in vertical columns along the canopy, top to bark, and it left a specific kind of discoloration at the cambium layer, a faint bronze lacing, almost decorative, like something burned into the wood from inside. The leaves at the crown dropped clean, no curling, no spotting. The bark at the base of the affected trunks had a smell, faint, almost sweet, like grain going off in a warm silo. I had smelled that smell once before. I stood at the 4th tree in Lou's east row, and I was 29 years old again, standing in a pecan grove in Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana, and Dr. Marguerite Fontenot was beside me saying, *Ray, do you smell that? Write that down. Nobody's going to believe the smell. Asterisk. I wrote it down then. I published it 2 years later in the Journal of Applied Plant Pathology, Volume 44. The paper was called Characterization of a Novel Mycotoxigenic Variant in Caria illinoinensis, the Terrebonne isolate. I was the sole author. It was, as far as I had ever been able to determine, the only paper ever written about this specific organism, because the Terrebonne outbreak was contained before it spread, and the isolate was cataloged and filed and largely forgotten. I walked all 7 orchards in an hour and 40 minutes. Ellis walked with me, sketching, asking quiet questions. By the time we got back to the equipment shed, I knew what I was looking at, and I knew what would save the trees, and I knew that Dr. Philip Tate's fumigation plan would not. Tate was on a call when I came back in. He held up one finger, the universal gesture for wait. I'll be with you shortly. You're not that important, and kept talking. I sat down across from Lou and his son-in-law Marcus, and I put my legal pad on the folding table, and I started writing. The treatment protocol for the terrebone isolate wasn't complicated, but it had to be precise. A targeted foliar application, a specific copper-based compound at a specific dilution, applied at the crown first and worked down in 2-day intervals. No soil disruption, no fumigation. If you caught it before the cambium damage reached 40%, and in most of these trees it hadn't, you could stop it and recover full production within 2 growing seasons. What's that? Lou asked. The treatment, I said. He looked at it. You know what this is? I've seen it before. 2003, Terrebonne Parish. Same organism, same presentation, same smell. I published the characterization paper. There isn't another one. This isolate doesn't come up often. I tore the sheet from the pad and set it in front of him. Don't let them fumigate, Lou. Not this week. Give me 4 days. Lou looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the paper. Then Lou looked over at Dr. Tate, who was still on his call, still turned away. 4 days, Lou said quietly, and picked up the paper. Dr. Tate found me in the parking lot. I was loading my sample kit back into the truck. Ellis was already inside, drawing a pecan tree in his notebook from memory, trying to get the canopy shape right. Mr. Guidry. Tate's voice had a specific quality I recognized. The careful neutrality of a man who wanted to be dismissive, but had learned to be polite about it. I want to be straightforward with you. I've reviewed 6 weeks of soil data, leaf samples, bar cultures. My team has consulted with 3 university departments. We are confident in our assessment. Understand, I said. The cooperative board will make the final call, of course. But I want to make sure you understand the risk of a delay. I do, I said. I also want to make sure you understand the risk of full ground fumigation on a 4th-generation pecan operation. But Lou knows his land. He'll decide. I got in the truck. Ellis looked up from his drawing. That man didn't like you very much, he said. He doesn't know me, I said. That's different. Ellis thought about this. Is it? Usually, I said, and started the engine. I learned afterward that Carolyn Voss had been on the phone with Dr. Tate while I was walking the orchards. She ran Voss Agri Group out of Nashville, a consulting and land management firm that worked with agricultural cooperatives across 7 states. She was not cruel. She was busy, and she trusted her team. And when Tate described the county extension agent who had arrived with a clipboard and a child, she said the thing I was told she said. Asked her to send someone qualified. Philip, this isn't a soil survey situation. Asterisk. She didn't know that I heard it. Tate had her on speaker while he stood in the doorway of the equipment shed, and sound carries in a converted barn. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. I had work to do. I drove out to the Doucette orchard the next 4 mornings before Ellis was awake. I mixed the compound myself. I knew the ratios by heart, had written them from memory and double-checked them against the paper I had pulled up on my laptop the night before, reading my own words from 20 years ago like a letter I'd forgotten I'd sent. I applied the foliar treatment to the canopy of the affected trees in Lou's East Row first, then the Pereira Grove, then the remaining 5 orchards in sequence. On the 3rd morning, Rosario Pereira walked out with a thermos of coffee and stood beside me while I worked. She was 71 years old and had been tending those trees since she was younger than Ellis. My grandmother planted the first row, she said. 1923. I know, I said. I've driven past them since I was a boy. She handed me the coffee. We didn't say anything else. There was nothing else that needed saying. On the 4th morning, the bronze lacing on the cambium of the first treated trees had stopped spreading. The crown drop had ceased. The bark smell was fading. I drove home, made breakfast, and got Ellis to school on time. 3 weeks later, the new growth came in. It came in slowly at first, the faintest edge of green at the crown of the East Row trees, then fuller. Then by the 3rd week, it was unmistakable. Lou called me on a Tuesday evening while I was helping Ellis with a history report, And he didn't say much, just asterisk Ray. Come look at your trees, asterisk. I went the next morning. All 7 orchards. The canopy on the treated sections was pushing new growth, full and clean. The leaves the deep summer green they were supposed to be. A few of the most damaged trees, the ones where the cambium loss had run deeper, were slower, but they were moving. Rosario Pereira was in her grove when I walked through, and she put her hand on the bark of the oldest tree in the row and didn't say anything for a long moment. 2 seasons? She asked. Full production, I said. Maybe 18 months. She nodded. That was all. Carolyn Voss flew into Birmingham on a Thursday and drove herself to Harwell County in a rental car. I found out later she hadn't told Dr. Tate she was coming. I was at the county extension office, a real office this one, not a shed, catching up on water table reports, Ellis at school, the afternoon quiet and warm when she walked in. She was maybe 45, in a jacket she'd thrown over a collared shirt, and she looked like someone who had driven 2 hours thinking about what she was going to say and had not quite decided yet. Ray Guidry, she said. That's me. She sat down across from my desk. Carolyn Voss. I was the one who told Philip Tate to send someone qualified. She said it straight out, no prelude, the way you say a thing when you've been carrying it and want to put it down. I'd like to understand what I missed. I pulled the journal paper up on my screen and turned the monitor toward her. Terrebonne Parish, 2003. Same mycotoxin variant. Same vertical column progression. Same cambium lacing. I was 29. My supervisor at the time, Dr. Marguerite Fontenot, was the one who flagged the smell first. I wrote the characterization paper. I'm the only author because there hasn't been another outbreak significant enough to study until now. She read in silence for a moment. Then, Voss Agri Group has a standing research contract with 2 universities and an independent lab. None of them found this paper. It's in volume 44 of the Journal of Applied Plant Pathology, I said. 2005, it's not behind a paywall. It just doesn't come up often because the isolate doesn't come up often. She was quiet for another moment. Outside, a truck went past on the county road. A bird somewhere in the live oak by the parking lot. What would the fumigation have done? She asked, though I thought she already knew. Ended 7 orchards, I said. 8 to 12 years of sterile soil. The Doucette family, the Pereiras, 5 others. Some of those trees are over 100 years old. She absorbed that. What do you need from me going forward? If this isolate shows up again in any of our cooperative accounts, I want my name on the recovery report, I said. The Harwell Cooperative's report. The 7 families should know who identified the treatment. Not for me, for the next time. If another extension agent sees this presentation in 20 years and wonders if anyone's seen it before, I want there to be a record. She looked at me for a moment. That's what you want. That's what I want. She nodded slowly. Then she said, I'd also like to consult with you directly, going forward, on unusual presentations. Not through Tate. Directly. She paused. If that's something you'd consider. I do this job because I like driving county roads, and I like being home when my son gets off the bus. I said, I'm not going back to a lab or a conference room. I'm not asking you to, she said. I'm asking if I can call you when my people run out of answers. I thought about Rosario Pereira's hand on the bark of a 100-year-old tree. I thought about Lou Doucette's east row pushing new green into the May air. You can call me, I said. Ellis asked me that evening what she had wanted. We were eating at the kitchen table. His idea of a good dinner was always breakfast, so it was eggs and toast and the last of the week's orange juice. And he asked it the way he asked most things, without looking up like the question had been sitting with him all afternoon. She wanted to know how I knew what I knew, I said. He thought about that. Did you tell her? I told her I wrote it down a long time ago, and that writing things down is how you make sure they're still true 20 years later. He considered this with the seriousness he applied to most things. Then, is that why you make me do my science journal? Partly, I said. He went back to his eggs. Outside, the county road was quiet, the evening light going long and gold across the fields. Somewhere out on the Doucette ridgeline, invisible from here but present, the East Row trees were pushing new growth into the last of the day's warmth, and the Pereira Grove was doing the same, and 5 other orchards besides. fourth generation, rooted deep, still standing. My son finished his dinner and went to do his homework, and I sat at the table a little while longer and thought about DR. Marguerite Fontenot saying, "Write that down, Ray. Nobody's going to believe the smell." And I thought about Claire, who had believed in writing things down too, who had kept a journal from the time she was 12 years old, whose handwriting I still recognized on the spine of every notebook on the shelf in our bedroom. I did the dishes. I helped Ellis with his science journal. I got him to bed on time. That was the whole of it. That was enough.